Hey everybody, how you doing?
Hey, Paul.
Pretty good.
Yeah, should we get started? I don't see Maru and Ivan on the call yet.
That's
Yeah, Maru's there.
maybe give it 30 more seconds.
I think we can start now. I see all the necessary folks available.
Alrighty.
So agenda items are mainly around. Yeah, let's start with Guangya's item. That's what he did put first. So there is no different priority for others.
Yeah, so the first tell me that I just post a question into the mail list, and the question is that because we are going to release Federation 002, so I'm just wondering, I think that we may need to finalize some concept like what is host cluster, what is member cluster, and also what is federation, so that we can make sure that people can talk with same concepts. So I hope that we can have some conclusion for this, and after we get some agreement, and maybe we need to create a PR to update the README of the Federation V2 document. And for now, I think that I got some comments from Maru, from Paul. I think that we agree that we use the concept of host cluster, which is running the Federation controller, and we also want to use member cluster and we also want to use member cluster to identify the cluster which is running customer workload. And I think that we still need a simple sentence for what is federation. Yeah, I just put the content there, and I hope that can get some comments.
So I think it's great that that you started off that thread because one thing I've seen in other projects is that people tend to develop their own naturally develop their own like mental vocabularies. And in the absence of a single place where things are defined, it's easy for people to develop their own divergent definitions of what certain things mean. So would you, Guanya, as like a takeaway from this, would you make a poll that adds maybe like a lexicon or dictionary.markdown to the docs folder, and we can get this into the repo and make sure that the terms are used consistently?
Yeah, sure.
That would be awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, Paul, so my thinking that I'm not sure if we can just update the README for the Federation V2 by adding some concept there.
I think it's helpful to define key terms there, but I kind of imagine that we'll have more terms than we want to put right into the README. So it will be helpful to just collect them all in like a single place in the docs folder too. So that once that list gets larger than we want to like have present right in the README, that there's a place for things to go.
Yeah, okay, so you mean that we need to create a new document to add some vocabulary there?
Yep.
Okay, sure.
That would be awesome. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm also interested if anyone can like provide a concise one-sentence definition of what a federation is. I'm not sure that I could at this point.
Yeah.
Do we have competing
ideas of what that definition looks like?
I'm not sure if we do, but I've noticed that I've noticed many different people, like some of whom aren't present in this meeting today, use the term a federation, and there are places, for example, like in the multi-cluster DNS API that is in the Federation repo, where there's a field called Federation name, and that also kind of points to that there is a noun that's called a federation. And I suspect that it has kind of like an intuitive meaning that people understand what it means, but I'm not sure we have a shared, crisp definition of the term.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Shashi or Irfan, or maybe Maru, you all have been working in this area much longer than I have. Do you guys feel like you understand what it means when someone says a federation?
I think I do, but the context is very specific. Generally, a federation is, a federation control plane with joined clusters. And the control plane is responsible for distributing or coordinating configuration distribution across the joined clusters. This is pretty specific. Over time, this is likely to change. And even the idea that member clusters are specifically running workloads is not necessarily, running workloads that Federation is providing. It may be that Federation is simply distributing like administrative content, service accounts, that kind of thing. So to me, I've always thought of a federation as a group of clusters for which configuration is applied sort of in a coordinated fashion. It's not very catchy, but I think that's technically what it is at its baseline.
In V1's term, when we were working with Federation V1, one small definition which was generally used was a tool or a control plane used to run an application into multiple clusters, a Kubernetes application into multiple clusters. So to me, I think Federation might still be similar or same indeed, and can be defined as a tool which can be used to run a KTS application into multiple clusters. Does that seem apt? In fact, if you search for Federation docs, there are Federation docs still existing in Kubernetes docs, kubernetes.io. So
the only catch is, sorry, keep going.
Yeah, so if you go to those documentations, I couldn't find a page which basically lists that this is Federation or definition of Federation. It generally lists why Federation, what is the need of it, and that kind of stuff. But to me, the apt definition is a tool which is used to run Kubernetes applications into multiple clusters. As you were saying, the other one is not necessarily catchy, what you were explaining.
I guess I'm just not sure that we have to focus on applications. It could just as easily be, doing non-workload configuration of clusters. So to me, configuration is kind of a catch-all, and configuration includes configuration of workloads. But maybe there needs to be a better catch-all term than configuration.
Yeah, I agree. We can find, something which represents the global set of KTS resources.
So does that give us a concise enough definition to at least get something into like a future vocab.markdown?
I think it needs more thought. Yeah, and Gwangya, you can initiate that, and the thoughts could then further be put over there against the PR
Yeah,
or the
sure.
doc that you initiate. That
Yeah,
sounds
sure.
okay, Paul?
Sounds great to me.
Meeting alignment.
Shashi, you need to mute. Sorry.
So the idea is we'll put the proposed definitions perhaps in an issue in the repo and discuss it further.
Yep.
Yeah, I think for now we seem to have pretty crisp terms around. Let's see. I don't want to use the wrong ones from my mental cache around host cluster and member cluster. So maybe we can just get those into somewhere on the docs area and or in the docs folder and talk a little more about the meaning of what a federation actually, like what the crisp definition of that one is.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good.
Thanks again for starting that discussion, Guanya.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Can I just interject with something quick that he's not on the call, but I just wanted to give a shout out to Dane at Cisco for the docs stuff that he's been doing for service DNS and multi-cluster DNS, or and sorry, for ingress DNS too. That's been great.
Thanks.
I think Dan was also on the call because he had just updated the document and put in his name here.
Yeah, I'm here.
I just mentioned that, but his name is like 5RUVLP. Something or other. So, thanks a lot, dude. That's been a great help.
Happy to.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah. Also, I found that there are many people are trying to deploy Federation on Google Cloud, and I think that Dan's documents should have a lot. And I was always trying to direct the user to his pull request. So I hope that his PR can be merged quickly.
Yeah. I am actually going to take a pass through the doc stuff after this. I saw that you updated those polls, so I'll take a look at them. They were very close, just had a couple things that I'm sure you fixed.
Great.
Okay, moving ahead. So, yeah, we have been talking about this 0.0.2 release. I think it's time we probably cut out one. So there is only one PR that federated jobs or job scheduling preferences PR, which is outstanding, which was tagged to this milestone. So I mean, I did fix the review comments and all that stuff, and some items I have kept for follow-up PRs. So to reviewers, this is a shout out that if you find that it's okay and the fixes are okay, we can go ahead and merge that. And this week, one of us can then cut release. I won't be available in office remaining 2 days. So it will need to be done by somebody else. And if that doesn't seem to be fit for merge, we can probably remove it from the milestone and then go ahead with the release. I don't find it logical to delay that release further.
Yeah, I'm glad you put that on the agenda for today, because I realized last night that we talked about the intention to start releasing regularly, and then we didn't do it yet. So I would also like to do the 0.0.2 release later this week. Maru, I think you indicated you had some interest in doing that. Do you want to take that as an action item for what day do we want to do this? Do we want to do it tomorrow or Friday? I guess we have different definitions of tomorrow and Friday for some of us, maybe.
Yeah, let's consider the Pacific time as the time. So tomorrow, Friday, either day is fine. I mean, this week's end of this week could be considered as the time to cut it out.
Okay. All right. So Maru, can we put you down for that one for this week?
Sure.
Okay, great. Awesome.
One thing to note to Maru or to whoever does the release is if we use the GitHub tagging technique, it does not create an annotated tag. So the way you'd get an annotated tag is if you create a tag in your own repo and then push upstream. That's something to keep in mind. We have some commands in the make file that create a version based on having annotated tags, not just simple tags. So that's if we keep it that way, we should create an annotated tag in order to have a proper version in the binaries.
Clearly information that should be documented and not just repeated in a meeting.
Yeah.
But thanks for pointing it out.
Yeah, thanks for pointing it out, Ivan.
Yeah, so I also have another question. So when we release the O2 release, so how do we want to make this release? Do we want to release a Helm chart or just some binaries?
This reminds me actually that we, I think, still need to get the chart published into a repo. So I think it's okay to do a release of the binaries and the images, and then we can probably for now bump the version of the chart in the Federation repository. But Guanya, I think that you and I had an action item there that we dropped that we should take back up to figure out what chart repository we're going to publish this to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do other people feel about that?
Yeah, I think the target is that we want to publish the chart into Helm chart repo so we can make sure the customer can get his chart from Google Cloud Storage. Actually, I think that this is an official way if we want to publish some charts.
Right.
I think the activity of publishing a chart can be post-release also. So when we cut out a release, the image and the binaries would be created, the KubeFed binary and the controller manager image, and relevant YAMLs or the configs will also be created, which will be available in our current repo. So that basically would be a tag on the image or a version of the binaries, and which can be utilized whenever the chart is published in the official charts repo. The chart could be available as part of the release in Federation WG repo also. I don't think it's sort of a necessary dependency for us to ensure that the chart is available as soon as you do the release in the official repo.
Yeah, you have to do the binary and image release first before you can really release the chart.
Correct. So it's a post-step kind of a thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I assume that Paul and Guangya, you will figure that out.
Yep.
Yeah, I made a note that we have an action item for that one. And Guanya, I'm going to put some time on your calendar tomorrow. It'll be in the afternoon your time and really early in the morning my time for us to sit down and have some scheduled time to do that, okay?
Okay, sure. I think that you can ping me in Slack channel, and yeah, so we have some discussions.
All right, cool, man.
Shashi, you want to talk about the next item?
Sorry, I also have another question. So do you have some plan to post some blogs or some other Medium articles to announce that the version was released?
Yeah, Irfan and I have had a running thing for a while that I've been kind of bandwidth starved to, that should be changing soon, to have a Kubernetes blog post on Federation. Irfan, I'm going to have a little bit more bandwidth for that, so maybe you and I can set up some structured time to get a next draft of that together, if you're interested in that.
Sure. Yeah, I am. And I remember I did put relevant or necessary text in there. And
yeah.
I think we probably just need to put it out for review and I mean, get some comments from rest of the folks over here, and go ahead with that, right?
Yeah. Before we did that, I wanted to take another pass through it, and having had the experience recently of doing a lot of writing of prose about this, like, now it's a little easier for me to put the stuff that we talk about all the time into actual written words, and just take another pass through that. So maybe I'll take that as something to do by Friday my time, and we can share it for a review for the wider group later, or early next week. Does that work for folks?
It works for me.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so I'll put one item. Okay, you are already doing that. Okay, Shashi, you can go ahead with the next item.
Okay, this is about the API rename of DNS API. I think Sohan, right? I think he tried. I think it looks like there might be, the facility might be not available right now in Kubernetes Builder. So I think it might take a long time. So how do we plan to go? Like, before this release, I hope we should change it. Otherwise, anyway, there will be slight confusion, isn't it?
Yeah, so Sohan created a test repository to test that, like, the pluralization and naming was handled the way we want it to. It looks like there might be a bug in KubeBuilder where the KubeBuilder resource path annotation that is supposed to control the plural name of the CRD might be busted. I actually, before this meeting started, was updating my own KubeBuilder to try to see if I could recreate it. But if there's a bug, I think we ought to fix it, because we use that, we use it in this project, and we want to make sure that gets fixed. I guess one thing that perhaps we could do, if that pluralization is not going to work, is what if we just change the name, since the resource is already in an API group that identifies it as multi-cluster DNS. What would you think of changing it just to service DNS record, and we could at least drop
exactly
the multi-cluster?
Yeah. So I can do that. I think it's not a big work for me.
Okay. I think Sohan was also interested in picking a coding task up around the rename.
Sure. If he's interested, I think we shall do it today.
Okay. Why don't we do that? Sohan, does that sound good to you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Thanks.
All right. Fantastic. Thanks for the investigation on that too, Sohan. That was really helpful.
Yeah, thanks. And yeah, probably the ingress DNS record also, right? It's almost same.
Yep. Yeah, that sounds good. Maybe 2 different polls for those because they're going to touch
Sure. I was
a bunch
also
of files.
the user docs also take care of this. And
Yeah, so one thing that we also found in KubeBuilder is that like the link in the KubeBuilder book to the file that's supposed to contain all the supported API annotations is broken. So I've talked to Phil Whitrock about adding that stuff back in. I actually have it partially done. I just need to wrap it up to add the API back in to fix that first. And then we need to establish for sure whether there's a bug or not. Sohan's asked a couple folks on Slack, but I don't think anyone's responded yet.
Okay, so our current action item is that we are going to name them as service DNS record and ingress DNS record, right?
Yep.
Yeah, Sohan will open polls for those.
Yeah, sure. Okay, moving to the next item, Shashi, you can update.
yeah, I
Please.
think I was actually more involved in this feature like cross-cluster service discovery, and kind of the feature when we migrated from V1 to V2, I think it seems like some features were broken, like Kubernetes was replaced by CoreDNS, and CoreDNS had some breakage in the feature for federation. I think I just pointed that out to one of the member there, and I think we were able to fix that. So recent CoreDNS just released yesterday seems to fix that. So overall, this feature, if you want it to work as we initially designed, I think it requires that particular CoreDNS release. But I'm not sure how we can limit or notify the users. Like if you want this feature, you need this CoreDNS. I'm not sure. That is not yet landed in the Kubernetes release.
So that's a really interesting question that is probably like the first of potentially many dependencies that will want to be like really crisp about what the required versions are. I have no good ideas of how to do that, but I think it will be important. So I would love if some courageous individual might have some good ideas they were willing to share about how to communicate that.
I think our best bet would be sharing the dependencies or the dependent versions of different components in the documentation.
Yeah, that's fine. But, that's also points like it could be. It's not straight out of the box. You need some tweaking in the release in order for these features to work. Yeah, I'm worried about that particular aspect.
Does anybody happen to know that might be able to tell us about it now, exactly how Kubernetes itself identifies the required version of dependencies? I mean, I think that there are probably still places where there are dependencies on specific tools, being on the host, etc., that are probably not fully documented. But I wonder if anybody's familiar with like the overall, for example, even just version of container runtime that you need. Like, does anybody know where that's currently documented for Kubernetes itself that maybe we could get some inspiration from?
Seems nobody here knows clearly about that or confident enough to.
Yeah. I think, yeah, the only problem is it will take quite a long time. These features need to be well planned, well in advance, so that those can be used by the users.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think most of it looks like a prototype right now for me.
Would anybody be interested in finding out, for example, how Kubernetes documents the version requirements for its own dependencies? And we can get a report back from somebody in a future working group.
Yeah, so based on my understanding, I think that currently Kubernetes also don't have such kind of document, but currently it's mainly depending on the Minikube, I think, because in the Minikube there are some different components and they also define the version of those components. And those components will also be updated for every release of Kubernetes.
Yeah, Gwangya, but in a normal deployment also, there are mechanisms to deploy Kubernetes using kubeadm or some other tools. So they also pull up version runtimes or containers or dependency tools together. So there should be some mechanism of figuring out, say, for a given Kubernetes release, what other dependencies versions to be pulled in.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that I can pose a question to the Kubernetes dev list and try to get some comment there, maybe.
Okay, thanks, Gwangya.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the another issue recently met through was I was trying to work out in the Google DNS environment. I felt like the feature needed a CNAME record, and it seems like it is broken. But there is a workaround. But still, there are some pros and cons, and yeah, maybe we will document that in the user doc. So I think like the kind of environments the feature needs to work in is pretty much, there are so many other DNS provider. It really depends on what environment you need, and mostly it was designed to work anywhere, but there seems to be, it is untested area, so we might discover some of this. So currently there is a workaround, but it is with some limited feature. So I think that's probably okay for now. I think, yeah, it also might take some long time to fix, I believe. This is the external DNS issue I'm talking about in the Google Cloud DNS. In the default configuration, we might not be able to write CNAMEs in Google Cloud. So, okay.
Yeah, I think we'll discover issues as and when this is tested. Does this also, like, this also puts in a thought, do we need to, I mean, if we, if the stakeholders are interested in the service discovery feature, do we need to introduce tests or E2E kind of tests which can verify this feature with at least some set of DNS providers? Does it make any sense?
I mean, for things we can do ourselves, like core DNS, it seems like something we should do. But I mean, are you asking more for, do we have people interested in supporting on Google Cloud or AWS?
Exactly, because those seem to be more popular choices when it comes to really using stuff in production.
I mean, I think we definitely want that, but if we're not running tests ourselves, I'm not sure that it's reasonable that other people bear the burden of both validating the code and testing the integration. We could at least validate the code as a stepping stone to enabling other people to validate integration with their services.
Yeah, this is something that I'm kind of wondering to myself about in terms of, you know, just using DNS as an example. With external DNS, you can integrate with all these different provider APIs. It's like natural that different features may work different, you know, well to different degrees on different DNS providers. I wonder what the right way to communicate with folks about exactly which things are known to work well with specific DNS providers, and just how do we get like our arms around the matrix of the different like software versions that might be in play for something like core DNS or you know, other attributes of all of the different variables that might change depending on how you have things configured. Seems like maybe a tough problem that will be central to finding a good solution for, to make sure that people have good experiences using Federation.
Yep. I think we might rely mostly, yeah, let's solve it when we encounter them. I think at least what we know working, I think let's rely on the user docs to make it sure it works for now. I believe that's a natural approach.
Makes sense to me. Are we talked through this one for now? Was this the last agenda item for today?
Yeah, I actually had to talk one more item. I missed putting it over here, and I see there is time. So, so as part of the review of that my PR, which is about the job scheduling preferences, there was an item which came up that it needs multiple override fields. And recently, at our integration group, also we came across this same requirement that the users of Federation basically need to have multiple override fields. So some examples are like a user which deploys a service or propagates a service across different clusters needs to have some cluster-specific service annotations. Another example is for storage. Storage, the mechanisms used for storage in K8s, each cluster will have different names for the storage-related resources, so they need to be overridden. So the list is like, I mean, list could grow. I mean, these are just some examples. So we needed a resolution for that, and I have been looking last couple of days. I have been looking at how it is implemented right now, and what can be done to extend it, and a really generic way. So I couldn't come up with a really generic way because earlier Shashi did try that, and it had its own problems and it did not work out, which was having the override also same as template, and then whatever is specified in that override template, you merge it with the federated template. What I am thinking right now is, and I'm putting this out for validation, what I'm thinking right now is that the way it is implemented right now is in the type config. It is the type config specifies a single path, which basically is mapped into the override field, and that is what is written to the target resource. So in place of having a single path, we can have a map of key and values. The key basically specifies the field name, and the value is the path, and that could be a list of list of key value pairs. It's not absolutely generic way, but most of the cases might actually work out using this.
So one thing that I was remembering about this is that I believe that one of our motivations for having the overrides resource be separate is that we felt like the initial design choice that we made to kind of constrain the problem space a little bit and make things simpler of just overriding a single field was something that we were likely to come back and readdress. Because you're right, Irfan, there are a lot of different places in the API where you would either, potentially want to use different annotations in certain clusters or otherwise differentiate certain fields. And I seem to recall that we kind of identified it like the other end of the complexity and flexibility spectrum from like treatment of a single field was something like arbitrary JSON or YAML patches, or something like what the Customize with a K project does, where you can specify kind of sparse YAML constructs. It makes sense to me, the approach of maybe doing something incrementally more flexible like what you suggest, rather than trying to go whole hog and make something that's infinitely flexible. So modular the specific details that I'm sure we can nail down, like that makes sense as like an initial next iteration to explore something that provides like explicitly configured support for more than one field. Just my subjective opinion, for whatever that's worth to you.
Yep, seems right. So what I'll do, I'll create an issue and I'll put what I'm intending to do, and other folks can then validate it.
That sounds great.
I think what you suggested is fine, except that we shouldn't be using a map because maps are verboten, but having an object with a key and a value, which is what we already do for like cluster versions and stuff, that should be fine.
Can you repeat that, Maru? I could not get the first statement that you made about the maps.
My understanding is that Cube API best practice is not to use maps. So
I'm sorry, Maru, your voice again became a little robotic for me. Really sorry. You will have to repeat that.
I'll address it on the issue.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So what Maru is referring to, Irfan, is that in the API conventions document, like for under the community repo, there's like some very specific things to the way that some YAML parsers handle maps, that there's like an API recommendation to avoid using maps and to prefer of key value objects for stuff like consistent traversal order and like avoiding people reading ordering semantics into an unordered map, stuff like that.
Okay.
Irfan, sorry, I came in towards the tail end of the discussion. I just wanted to clarify, did you suggest that the values in this map, or whatever it turns out to be, that those were paths to API objects, or those straight values that can be substituted directly into the template?
No, the values are, so there are a couple of things which need to be put in overall spectrum. So one place is, so how it is implemented right now is that type config specifies what is the type of the target object, what is the type of template, what is the type of override resources. And additionally, it also says that what is the path of the override field. that needs to be overridden. So that is right now implemented only for one field. And then it is then picked, this field value is picked from the override resource, and it is replaced into the target template resource.
Oh, so when you talk about path, are you talking about what kind of a path?
Spec dot path inside the resource. So for example, spec dot replicas. So that's the path.
Oh,
or
okay, so the field inside. Okay.
Inside. So it could be a nested path. So why we consider it as a path? Because we are using the untyped raw JSON configuration, or the.
Okay, I misunderstood you to mean a path to a different API object, and I was a bit concerned about the performance there. The other question and/or suggestion, sorry, somebody needs to mute. I think it's echoing. Is it worth just taking on a standard templating substitution mechanism to, or at least drawing inspiration from it, rather than inventing our own one, which, you know, I think we're going to find that somebody wants to put expressions in these things and somebody wants to do something else, and next minute we have to go through multiple iterations. I don't have, oh, somebody's causing an echo again.
It's because I keep trying to find a place to talk, but I'm not able to. That's me. So.
Oh, go for it, Paul.
No, I was gonna agree with you, Quentin, that once you start writing down like JSON path expressions, there will be a natural gravity toward let's build a DSL in this thing or some other type of language. My own preference would be to avoid any of that, and like let's be really crisp as we look at the design for this feature, which I think is necessary to have, like for just in terms of the things that people are going to want to do. But let's make sure that we avoid any temptation to put a template language into this. Like I still remember the great template language wars of 2015 in Kubernetes, I think it was, that kind of wound up with no officially adopted template spec, although there are places in the API where there are kind of very basic substitution mechanisms. My own preference would be let's not have any of that for now, and take that as it comes, as people may want it, to figure out what to do, or if there's a way they can use tools on top of Federation to accomplish.
Yeah, my suggestion was actually something slightly different than what you're saying, I think, which is, so first point, let's avoid developing a proprietary templating language. Absolutely agree with that part. I'm not as in favor of building the simplest thing to start with, because I just don't think we're very good at deciding what the simplest useful thing is. We've got a bunch of simple things we've built that have been too simple and not useful. And so I don't know of one, but I would strongly suspect that there is a reasonably good, suitable templating language for YAML or whatever it is that we need at the moment, and that we can therefore perhaps, so I would like us to support the simplest possible case, like the one we have today with a single value. I would like us to support what seems like incrementally the next simplest one, which is such a template with two values, you know, $val1 and $val2 kind of thing. But that can equally easily be extended to things like expressions, etc. And can we not just adopt an existing thing, not necessarily a Kubernetes thing, but just a standard generic templating solution, and say, stick the config for that in a config map, and we will apply it to your thing. And the simplest case is, you know, key 1 equals value 1, key 2 equals value 2, but you can do all this other stuff as well. And see where that breaks, whether there are security implications there or other problems, but maybe use that as a starting point. I'm done.
Yeah, agree, Quinton. So that's what I'm not sure if you did catch that or you missed it. That's what we were actually talking about earlier. So a really generic solution is desirable, but we might as well be incrementally moving towards that. So I'll look into the possibilities of our templating solution also. If if we find issues or we did not find anything generic, then the one that we did talk about using a key value player is what I'll implement.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I think that's it for today's discussion. If there is anything else, anybody else want to talk, we can continue or we can say bye-bye.
So I have a question here. So does anyone going to attend the KubeCon in Shanghai in next month?
I wish. Unfortunately, no.
Wangya, I'll be there, and I believe Quinton is also going to be there.
Okay, cool. I think that we can meet in person. Yeah.
Sure.
Excellent. Yeah, it'd be great to meet you, Gwanya. And yeah, it's amazing how big and productive this group has become. I see we have, what, 17 people here today? Very, very cool.
Great.
Yeah, +1. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
See you next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.